Nine Witches Family Disruption is a comedic point-and-click adventure game free from Prime Gaming until the 14th of August 2024. Very much in line with the old Monkey Island type games, though with a simplified and updated interface. You take control of two characters, Professor Krakowitz and his assistant Akiro, during World War II, tasked with thwarting a terrible plot the German army are working on. I won't go into the storyline too much. There's no need to spoil things like that, I don't think. This is another pixel art indie game, which must be relatively cheap for Amazon to get hold of, since they're currently giving away 3 of them at the time of writing. The graphics are pretty good here actually though. For the majority of the playtime you're viewing relatively well defined characters, which makes each one seem distinct and gives them a bit of a personality. I mean, I say relative because they're still pixel art, they're not detailed, but they're pretty decent. Things get less distinct on an overland map where your characters turn into basically 16 pixels or so, and they're fuzzy and it's blobby, but it's fine. You're mostly there just to travel to and from different locations. The game as a whole has a dark, dismal feel that's very suited to the dark magic themes, and to a degree the humour. There was a bit of a question there, wasn't there? I'll talk about it in a bit. There wasn't much in the way of a soundtrack for me. I was generally left with an eerie silence broken by sound effects and an occasional ominous snippet of some stringed instruments. As I understand it, this could be a bug. For me, the music played for about 5 seconds and then stopped. Current advice, if you get this, is to try restarting the game, though that just didn't work for me. Outside of those things, some sound samples are used at particular times, and they really stick out. I think in a bad way. There's no voice acted lines, which I think is understandable given the cost and the amount of dialogue here, and I don't think it's really needed. That's because the story in the game is really strong. There are plenty of cutscenes that introduce characters and the stakes involved in your attempts to foil the plans of the villains, so you know exactly why you're doing what you're doing. And there's plenty of plot twists that I definitely didn't see coming. I think it all holds up well enough without voice acting. Along with a good story, there's also an interesting gameplay mechanic that I felt added a bit to the genre. Now if this has been in other games of this type, I'm sorry, I've not seen it. Feel free to actually me in the comments. As I mentioned, you take control of 2 characters, one at a time with the other one trailing the active one. And no, that's not the novel mechanic. The novel mechanic is that the professor can astral project, which allows him to both talk to ghosts, pass through locked doors, and later on control distracted NPCs. This leads to novel problems that take advantage of that, and new puzzles are always a good thing in puzzle games. The other character, Akiro, is able to fight with his trusty pistol, or guns that the German have carelessly left fully loaded on the floor. Wonder why they lost. Combat's frustrating though. The actual gameplay of it is simply lining your character up, shooting, and crossing your fingers that you haven't just run out of ammo at the wrong time. Some of the fights towards the end are challenging. You don't have a lot of hit points yourself and can't take many shots. But you are given the option of making the combat easier if you wish, via an in-game deal with the devil, if you haven't chosen it to begin with, which is quite fun. It wasn't particularly fun to fight though. I did it out of sheer bloody mindedness. So if you choose to avoid it or make it easier, don't feel like you're missing out. The puzzles are mostly reasonably well pitched. Not too hard or too easy. I did get stuck a few times. One was just me being tired and a bit slow, which is obviously my fault. There was one where a mechanic wasn't very well explained. The professor's ability to command NPCs is a bit clunky, and if I was told that I can just move the NPC by moving to a position that isn't highlighting an object, that would have been helpful. There's also a in-game party that for no apparent reason requires you to talk to every NPC that you can talk to. Don't know why, like, some of them don't really give you any helpful information. I reached for a walkthrough to get past that bit. The game also does that point and click staple thing that I'm not a fan of, having puzzles or items in areas that you can't do a thing with and that will require backtracking way down the line, long after you've forgotten about the contents of that area, in order to progress. My experience with these games is that it's just part of these games, and that's why I typically don't play them. I did call this game comedic, but haven't talked about the comedy yet, so let's do that now. It wasn't for me. I didn't find the majority of the comedy in this funny. Some of it's lol-so-random stuff, didn't land with me, and there are too many fourth wall breaking gags in here for my personal taste. Also, a lot of the gags are reused too, so even if they were funny the first time, they're not on the fourth or fifth go through. And some of them are long, far longer than the joke warrants. Obviously you should just take this as the opinion of one old man. Comedy is very subjective, and it might work really well for you, so all I can say is it didn't for me, and it actually hurt my experience of the game. I'm now 5 hours in, and on the last chapter, chapter 9, but don't really want to finish the game. I've started to get irritated by the comedy, which up until now I kind of just ignored. And I've also hit my limit on the requirement to backtrack to every location, trying every object on everything on screen, which for me is never very high to begin with. Again, that's why I don't play these games. I know that sounds really negative, but honestly it's not. The fact I got 5 hours into a game whose genre I generally don't like, despite the humour not working for me, and mostly kind of enjoyed it up until that point, is a real positive. I had stretches of cracking through the puzzles, getting into the story and being surprised by the plot twists that actually made it worth downloading the game for me. And the astral projection mechanic was a fun little bonus too. This is a solid point and click adventure game that fans of the genre should definitely check out while it's free. Just because I didn't personally like it doesn't mean it's not decent. Even if the humour isn't to your taste, the story and puzzles might be enough to make it enjoyable. Okay, I'm done with the 1940s, I miss the modern world, sort of. So I'm off. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.